The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was one of the most significant events in world history. Its roots can be traced back to a complex web of social, political, and economic factors. France, under the rule of King Louis XVI, had a rigid social hierarchy. The First Estate, the clergy, and the Second Estate, the nobility, held privileges and paid little to no taxes, while the Third Estate, commoners, which made up about 98% of the population, shouldered the tax burden. This system of inequality caused growing resentment, particularly as Enlightenment ideas about equality and governance spread through French society. Economically, France was in dire straits. Years of war, including involvement in the American Revolution, had drained the treasury. The national debt had reached a crisis point, and King Louis XVI's finance ministers, including Jacques Necker, attempted to introduce reforms. However, these efforts were met with resistance from the privileged estates. By 1788, France was effectively bankrupt, and the king was forced to call the Estates General, a legislative body that had not convened since 1614. The meeting of the Estates General. The Estates General convened in May 1789. It consisted of representatives from the three estates, but the method of voting was controversial. Traditionally, each estate had one vote, meaning the first and second estates could outvote the third, despite being vastly smaller in number. The Third Estate, demanding more representation, declared itself the National Assembly on June 17, 1789, and vowed to draft a constitution. This marked the beginning of open defiance against royal authority. King Louis XVI attempted to suppress this movement, but his actions only heightened tensions. On July 14, 1789, Parisians stormed the Bastille, a royal fortress and prison, in search of weapons. This event became a symbol of the revolution and is now celebrated as Bastille Day. The revolution quickly spread to the countryside, where peasants revolted against feudal lords in what became known as the Great Fear, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. In August 1789, the National Assembly issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a document that enshrined the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. It proclaimed that all men were born free and equal in rights, challenging the long-standing privileges of the nobility and clergy. The declaration was influenced by Enlightenment thinkers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Locke, as well as by the American Declaration of Independence. The declaration was a significant step toward the dismantling of the old regime, but it did not immediately solve France's financial problems or address the growing radicalism within the revolution. King Louis XVI, who had been reluctantly cooperating with the National Assembly, was increasingly seen as an obstacle to further reform. In October 1789, a group of Parisian women marched to the royal palace at Versailles, demanding bread and forcing the king and his family to relocate to Paris, where they would be under the watchful eye of the revolutionaries. The fall of the monarchy. As the revolution progressed, factions within the National Assembly became more radical. The Jacobins, led by figures such as Maximilien Robespierre, advocated for a republic and the abolition of the monarchy. In contrast, the Girondins, a more moderate faction, sought to preserve some form of constitutional monarchy. Tensions between these groups would soon lead to violence. In June 1791, King Louis XVI and his family attempted to flee France, hoping to rally support from foreign monarchs. However, they were caught in the town of Varennes and brought back to Paris. This failed escape undermined the king's already fragile position, and calls for his abdication grew louder. On August 10, 1792, revolutionaries stormed the Tuileries Palace, where the royal family was residing. King Louis XVI was arrested, and the monarchy was officially abolished in September 1792. The National Convention, which replaced the National Assembly, declared France a republic. In January 1793, King Louis XVI was put on trial, found guilty of treason, and executed by guillotine on January 21. The Reign of Terror. With the fall of the monarchy, the revolution entered its most radical phase, known as the Reign of Terror. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre, took control of the government in 1793. Its goal was to protect the revolution from internal and external enemies, but it quickly became a period of extreme violence and repression. Thousands of people were executed by guillotine, including Queen Marie Antoinette in October 1793. The Reign of Terror was marked by widespread fear, as anyone suspected of counter-revolutionary activity could be arrested and executed. The revolutionary government also implemented radical social and economic reforms, including the creation of a new calendar and the establishment of state-run schools. The excesses of the Reign of Terror eventually led to its downfall. In July 1794, Robespierre was arrested and executed, bringing an end to the most violent phase of the revolution. The National Convention then established the Directory, a more moderate government that sought to restore stability to France. The rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Although the Directory brought a measure of stability, it was plagued by corruption and inefficiency. It faced ongoing challenges from royalists, who sought to restore the monarchy, and from radical revolutionaries, who wanted to continue the policies of the Reign of Terror. France was also embroiled in a series of wars with European monarchies that feared the spread of revolutionary ideas. Amid this turmoil, a young general named Napoleon Bonaparte rose to prominence. Napoleon's military successes, particularly in Italy and Egypt, made him a national hero. In November 1799, he staged a coup d'état, overthrowing the Directory and establishing the consulate, with himself as first consul. This effectively marked the end of the French Revolution, though Napoleon would continue to consolidate power, eventually crowning himself Emperor of the French in 1804. The impact of the French Revolution. The French Revolution had a profound impact on France and the world. It brought an end to the old regime, abolished feudal privileges, and established the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity as the foundation of modern French society. The revolution also inspired similar movements in other parts of Europe and the Americas. However, the revolution was not without its contradictions. While it proclaimed universal rights, these rights were often limited in practice. Women, for example, were excluded from political participation, despite their active involvement in revolutionary activities. The revolution also failed to address the issue of slavery in France's colonies until 1804. The revolution's radical phase, particularly the Reign of Terror, demonstrated the dangers of extremism and the difficulty of balancing liberty with order. The rise of Napoleon, who would go on to establish an authoritarian regime, also highlighted the tension between revolutionary ideals and the realities of governance. The French Revolution was a complex and multifaceted event that reshaped the political landscape of Europe. It marked the beginning of the modern era, as it challenged traditional hierarchies and introduced new ideas about governance and society. Although it ultimately led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte and the establishment of an empire, the revolution's legacy of republicanism and democratic principles would continue to influence the world for centuries to come. The revolution also left a lasting impact on the Catholic Church. The revolutionaries sought to reduce the power of the Church, confiscating its lands and establishing the civil constitution of the clergy in 1790. This law placed the Church under state control and required clergy to swear allegiance to the French government, which led to a schism between the revolutionary government and the papacy. Pope Pius VI condemned the revolution's treatment of the Church, and relations between France and the Vatican remained strained for many years. In the end, the French Revolution was a defining moment in world history. It demonstrated the power of popular movements to overthrow entrenched systems of power, but it also showed the challenges of creating a new political order based on principles of equality and justice. The lessons of the revolution continue to resonate in modern discussions about democracy, human rights, and social change.